In this video I'll show 1970s toys, old music paraphernalia, 1980s toys, vintage film equipment, a 2-inch Bible, and several other old items. All these things have been in my house for decades and have enormous sentimental value. Most have been packed away in boxes for safekeeping, so let's have a good look at them, and feel free to leave a comment below as I'd like to get some feedback or more information on these items. This is a 1977 Marvel Special Edition Star Wars comic. It is larger than average, 10 by 14 inches, and cost only $1. It is based on the first edit of the film, and therefore contains scenes that were removed from the final theatrical version. One such deleted scene from the film is Luke watching the Star Destroyer battle from his home planet through his viewer. Also, a scene of Luke inside Tosche Station, as well as Luke talking to Biggs alone outside. These extra scenes in the comic that did not appear in the movie kind of confused me as a kid. It also has Han Solo's encounter with Jabba the Hutt at Mos Eisley Spaceport. And yes, that green creature with the black eyes and whiskers is supposed to be Jabba. The Star Wars A New Hope came in Part 1 and 2. This is Part 1. I had Part 2 at one time, but I can't remember what happened to it. This is an original Rubik's Cube. I got it for Christmas 1980, when it was first released internationally. My parents later told me they had to drive all over the place but couldn't find one. They finally went to a store that had one left. That's how much they were in demand for Christmas that year. Although the stickers are worn down through use and age and it squeaks a bit more, the cube still works. Here are all my rock and heavy metal pins that I wore on my leather jacket when I was in high school. Rock pins were very popular in the 1980s, and I bought most of mine at local flea markets. The rock pins I own include The Doors, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, The Scorpions, The Who and others. I also have a Gibson double neck and a Fender Telecaster pin as well. This is the oldest toy in my collection. It's called a Tumble Tower by Fisher-Price. I've had it since I was a toddler. It's so old that it's starting to turn yellow. The purpose is to move all the white balls from the top to the bottom by moving the handles and wheels. Wow, I can still do it. It even came with a timer, which I thought was kind of strange considering the age range of the toy. Here is my collection of Star Wars action figures from the first film and from The Empire Strikes Back. Due to the unforeseen popularity of the film in 1977, the Kenner Toy Company was not able to distribute the action figures until early 1978, several months after the release of the first film. I remember as a kid having to wait and wait, and I finally got my first figure, Luke Skywalker, at the local department store. I remember the Jawa figure was really hard to find, having to go to several stores before I found one. The figures are so old now that some of them are turning yellow. This is the very first book I ever owned, and I still have it, called What Time Is It?, from a series of puppet storybooks distributed by Grosset and Dunlop in 1968. It's a book for children to learn how to tell time. When I was a kid, I actually thought the book was about me, since the boy's name is Bobby as well. I just couldn't remember ever owning a dog, or using half a tube of toothpaste when I brushed my teeth. This is a Polaroid SX71 step camera from 1978. This is my very first camera. It was so easy to use. All you had to do was insert the cartridge that held 10 photos, close the front, aim, and shoot. After the picture kicked out, the photo would develop right in front of your eyes over a period of about 20 seconds. No more having to take film to the store and waiting a few days to have the film developed. This is my very first guitar book, Mental Health, Quiet Riot by Cherry Lane Music Company. This was my first introduction to guitar tablature and learning guitar solos. I had just started playing electric guitar, so it was really difficult for me. Had lots of fun learning and working at it though. And this is a program from my very first concert, Iron Maiden on their Peace of Mind World Tour in 1984. I was totally blown away by their songs, their stage set, and Dave Murray's guitar solos. The opening act was Twisted Sister. Man, Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens was such an awesome arena for concerts. It's now a grocery store. Kind of weird to think you can buy a bottle of salad dressing or a box of breakfast cereal at the exact same spot where all those bands were playing live, or where the Leafs scored their goals. This is a Tomitronic 3D Space Attack handheld electronic game, released in 1983. It had 2 LCD screens creating a 3-dimensional effect. You had to shoot the enemy ships coming at you in a narrow space trench. Very much like the final battle on the Death Star in Star Wars: A New Hope. I'll give a quick demonstration of the game. This is a Bell & Howell MX32Z Super 8 and regular 8 movie projector from 1981. It could play both formats of 8mm movie film. Pretty noisy or what? I used to make 3D stop-motion cartoons when I was a kid, so my parents bought me this Super 8 projector and camera, as our old regular 8 camera from the 1950s didn't work very well anymore. The light bulb would make the projector pretty hot after a while as well. And this is a Bell & Howell 2103 XL Super 8 camera, also from 1981. It was much better than the 1958 Kodak Brownie regular 8 camera I was using to film my cartoons. It's still in great condition as I only used it a few times. This is my very first novel I read as a kid, The Hardy Boys' Secret of the Lost Tunnel. I remember the Hardy Boys books being very popular in the 1970s. A lot of my friends had several of their books from the series, and at the local bookstore there would be an entire section of Hardy Boys books. A giant row of blue book spines. This is the Fisher-Price record player. It was introduced in 1971, but this one is from 1973. I clearly remember going to visit Santa at the shopping mall as a kid and asking for a record player for Christmas, and this is what I received. It's turned yellow over the years, but still plays, somewhat. It came with 5 records and 10 songs, including Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Jack and Jill, London Bridge, Hickory Dickory Dock, and most of the songs from Black Sabbath's Master of Reality album. Okay, maybe not Black Sabbath. Let's have a listen. This is called a Jacob's Ladder, also known as Chinese blocks, and a click-clack toy. It's a toy my dad built for me when I was a kid. My dad enjoyed woodworking projects around the home. It's a traditional toy that dates back to at least the 19th century. I believe he found the instructions on how to build it in an old book. The strips of material are connected to the wood blocks in such a way that allows the blocks to create the illusion of falling. This is a Hika's Kukuk Weather House from the 1950s. It was originally made in Germany and belonged to my grandparents. I remember seeing it in their house all the time when I was a kid. It's made of plastic and wood and still works. When it's sunny outside, the lady figure comes out. When it's going to rain, the man in the raincoat with the umbrella comes out. Still works to this day. This is a vintage Walt Disney Winnie the Pooh mug. I checked online and it was made in 1964. It's been in the house all these years and I don't have any information about it. Still in pretty good shape considering its age. This is a Viewmaster from the 1970s. Just like all the other Viewmasters out there. I remember as a kid my 2 favorite Viewmaster slides were the Man on the Moon and the dinosaurs. This toy from 1979 is called a Flippy Flyer, also known as a pocket flying saucer. It's made of cloth and is lightweight so you can fold it up and place it in your pocket. It has its advantages over a regular plastic frisbee, such as not hurting your hands so much when you catch it or not rolling away in the wind. This is a 2-inch by 2.5-inch Holy Bible that belonged to my great-grandmother in Newfoundland, Canada. It was passed down to my grandmother in the 1930s, so it has to be at least from the 1920s. The Bible is leather-bound and the printing is very small. It is now in fragile condition as some of the pages are starting to break apart from the spine of the book. It can be read only with the aid of a magnifying glass. I'm not sure why Bibles like this were made so small. This is a 1958 Lowe Opta broadcast receiver, made in Germany. I think it belonged to my grandparents. It's been sitting in a closet for decades. I tried to get it working recently, but no luck. It's really heavy as the body is made of wood, and most of the internal parts are made of metal. Here's a view of the backside and inside the radio. As you can see, it's a tube radio and has a real old, musty smell to it. It must have consumed a lot of electricity when it was turned on. I seem to remember it working when I was a kid though. Here we have a Rubik's Snake from 1981. It's actually one long piece with movable joints that can be made into several different shapes. It's one of many 3D puzzles that came out in the early 80s due to the popularity of Rubik's Cube. This mantel clock belonged to my grandparents. Unfortunately, I have very little information other than the fact that it was made by the New Haven Clock Company in Brantford, Ontario, as stated on the inside label. I'm guessing that it was made in the 1940s based on the style of the sides, which was popular in that time period. The mechanism had been removed years ago and has been replaced by a battery-powered caliber. The wood is still in great shape though. Here we have a panorama slide photo viewer. From what I can find online, it was most likely from the 1960s. Other than that, I have no information on it. It's great for one person who wants to view the slide photos. You simply insert the slide photo at the top and the battery-powered light turns on behind it. Finally, here are some photos of a toy called Micronauts from the late 1970s. All the parts on each toy were interchangeable, so you could build your own toy. I don't have them anymore as they started to turn yellow and fall apart. Just these photos I took a few years ago before I tossed them out. Well, that's all. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you can leave a comment below.